Good afternoon. Welcome to Sony, NAB 2022. I'm Dan Perry with Sony, and virtual production is a topic I think we all continue to hear. From the Sony standpoint, we think we're very well positioned to do this. We have the Venice camera systems. We have our B-Series CLED wall here, which was developed with virtual production in mind. And today we assembled a group to be able to talk about what's happening now in virtual production and where we're going in the future. I'd like to introduce David Morn, Industry Relations, Epic Games. How are you? All right. AJ Wedding, founder of Orbital Studios. And Christian Tico Herrera, cinematographer. Welcome. I think when we start talking about virtual production, one of the big things is Epic Games and Unreal Engine. It's kind of it seems to be the heart and soul of a lot of this virtual production. Let's take a look at an example of Epic Games and Unreal Engine.
Hold up. Peekaboo, I see you. Peekaboo, I see you. Say hallelujah. Peekaboo, I see you. Peekaboo, I see you. Say hallelujah. Amen. Say hallelujah. I've been loving you. I've been loving you. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Excellent. I think first, David, what is your definition of virtual production?
Well, there's many definitions of virtual productions that we're converging through a number of efforts that are going on right now, such as the Virtual Production Glossary, which is an open project to name all these new things that we're doing. But overall, virtual production is the use of real-time technology in production. So it's normal production, all the things that filmmakers already do, with the ability to look at their visual effects or the animation, those things that used to take a long time to do were all done in post, to bring that in front of the filmmaker so they can deal with them the same way or as close as possible as they do with live action and the normal filmmaking. That's virtual production.
And how are they responding to that? What are some of the benefits that you're hearing from creatives as they begin down this road?
Well, you know, computer graphics started and computers were very slow and it took a long time to do things, and the renders were like, it took us 4 hours per frame. You know, this was a glorious thing, you know, that the longer it was, but it was not good for visualizing what you were doing. It took movie making, big part of it for the big tentpole movies, out from production to post-production, and that created all sorts of new ways of working, which are great, and we saw fantastic movies that could not have been done in any other ways, but it was always done in post, and it kind of took away something from the filmmakers. So virtual production started a long time ago. Robert Zemeckis in the Polar Express, and of course Jim Cameron on the Avatar movie showed a way where you could visualize some of your movie as you were shooting it, but it was still just the director who could see it in their own virtual camera and all that. I think the latest phase of virtual production that we're talking about and that is now present is the one where you can put the visual effects there's in real time on a wall in front of the cinematographers and the team, and everybody can now behave the way they behave normally on a set. Yeah.
And AJ, Orbital Studios in LA. Let's take a look at Orbital Studios. We have a quick little video here. And this is shot on your stage, AJ?
Yeah, so this is on one of our stages in LA. We have a 36,000 square foot facility in LA. We're also opening up operations in Chicago. That clip was essentially a test that we're doing. That video wasn't colored or anything. It's straight out of the camera. And I think the goal that we were trying to showcase was that a lot of the things that were not possible yesterday are possible today in virtual production. So like for instance, with the pixel pitch being much tighter, you can get the camera closer to the wall. We're able to track things like an Airy Trinity using smaller pucks for tracking, whereas normally you have the big spiky ball kind of thing. And so we're able to do a lot of things that even just a few months ago were not possible. And that has to do with the technology getting that much better this quickly.
And smaller pucks, things like that, I would expect that appeals to you, Christian. As you worked into virtual production, what are you seeing?
So, well, as AJ said, like, at least on the Snowfall, when we, put in all these LED walls, we were able to bring them much, much closer to our sets. And that also affects the light source, right? So since we are having all this closer to our windows or even open spaces, that will become our light source because they're much closer. And that also, because we're like in a smaller pitch, then we can also photograph them like right next to the door or next to the windows with no problems or moire or seeing the pixels itself,
And how did you kind of start working with Snowfall?
Well, I think
Or I guess first of all, what season did you begin working with?
Season 5.
Season 5.
And I believe that they experimented with the technology the previous season, and it just quite wasn't there yet. And our thing was, just like with every production, we want to get involved as early as possible. If we can be there talking to the production designer before he's built the set, that's huge for us. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with production designers who want the windows to be 20 foot tall. And I say, well, then I need a 30-foot LED wall. So how much money do you have? So yeah, the earlier on we can get involved, the better. And I think the thing with Snowfall and also the show we're doing now, which is Justified, we're able to, with full virtual production, the workflow moving from post to pre-production is really tough on a television schedule. So what we tried to do was develop a system that's a little bit easier for TV schedules. So we're not using full virtual worlds as much as we're using video plates that we track in 2.5D. So we'll basically layer it. It's something we can do very quickly. We can turn around plates in a couple of weeks. And so it's advantageous to the television, where they don't necessarily know in script number 5 if they're going to need the Hollywood Bowl. I need so long to build that. So that was kind of our goal, and it's worked out, I think, pretty well. And getting to work with people like Tico early on and talking about, what do these plates need to look like? Well, what time of day do you want? That kind of stuff. And, all of that planning and being a part of that team is just really important for virtual production.
And we have a clip from Snowfall. It was, I think you guys are in an airplane. Let's take a look at the clip, and we can kind of talk to it.
November 29, are you cleared for takeoff on runway 2? Landing gear up. Lights off. Flaps up. Climb power. Fucking plenty. You ready for this?
So I assume you or the operator were not sitting in those alternate seats, and that was not happening. So again, we're looking at back plates here. I guess we'll start there. How did you guys capture the back plates?
We got in a helicopter. Got in a helicopter and went up and just shot all day long. All the plates for all of the aerial shots. And this was actually kind of a funny story when we were shooting in the airport. They showed me the plane. They said, okay, this is the airplane we're using, and they're filming the outside of it. And the next day we're supposed to be filming. So I've built this LED wall for this, to go over the wing of this plane. And when they bring in the plane the next day, it's a different plane that they're using for the inside. So we had to kind of start from scratch and rebuild this structure, so that was a lot of fun.
And
But yeah.
from the back plates, Christian, how does that affect what you do as a cinematographer?
Well, I think it works in our favor in general. Like as I keep looking at all this. Like this is a tool that it will work in our favor, right? And it works for us. Not we work for this. So having LED walls instead of having, I don't know, green screen, that means that we have, first of all, is a lot more realistic. So the reaction of the cast or the actors to these LED walls, where they can see a playback image, right? They get more involved and they get more in the real set, on the real location, right? Because at the end of the day, it feels like you are actually on this in this moment. Like they can feel that they are flying, right? But they're looking out of the window, they're looking sky, they're looking actually down to where they're flying over, and it helps the acting, and also helps like in terms of the lighting also, right? Because it's all this interacting light that is happening with the LED walls, that you can have the LED wall to give you some of this ambient lighting, and then that will give you a motivation to put some extra lighting to, like, in this case we didn't pixel map it, but we could pixel map all these plates to be also playing in our reacting lighting. So it's just becoming a lot more realistic, and it's actually like, just give more, it's a much real feeling overall. And in terms of like when you get into like filming it, also just it helps you to understanding like, how much camera move you can also do, right? Without having a problem of being, well, this is an example of a plane, but we also had some card scenes that we did that, we were on the stage, we have our panels, and we were able to do any camera angle that we really wanted, just coming from inside the card, they come out of the window, and then we dolly track to the other side of the card, and then we also push into the window. You would not be able to do that in the
Can't do that
process.
on the streets in LA.
Yeah, we'll take a few hours of the schedule, But having this is like very production friendly, right? Because time-wise is like, trying to do all this in a couple hours, and then you're moving on to something else.
And I think we have another clip from Snowfall. This one is a little more regular production as far as airplanes not flying, but let's take a look at this.
Just like this, for example, like the plate is a motivation of the morning lighting, right? So we just have the feeling of the blue of all that you're seeing is a LED wall outside of this penthouse.
Yeah, and all the like glass surfaces and things that you get those reflections on that you just wouldn't get if it was green screen. In fact, I think there was a shot at that table that we did toward the end of the season where we had a nighttime plate, and you put the camera looking at the table where the moon was reflected in it. And then coming up to the actors, the moon was what was lighting them, the moon on the wall. So that was kind of awesome.
And you and I we talked a little bit about that the panels become a lifestyle. As a cinematographer, you have to be very cognizant of that and very involved in creating the backplates.
Yeah, well, I was talking to, it's a collaboration at the end, it's just not just having any kind of plates. It's a plate that it also work on our narrative in terms of the script that we have. So going through like what kind of plates at what time of the day and what do you really need to capture. For example, we just been looking all these like daytime plates, but it gets tricky when you go to like night exterior plates, right? So having, we were able to have we work on the Snowfall with the Sony Venice. So we were able to do a 2500 plates that we're going out to photograph the streets of Los Angeles. And when you have the plate, then you start looking not just a black with some highlights in the back, you have a lot of information and detail in buildings, in the streets, in the cars like driving by. So you have a lot of capturing all those plates with a high ISO camera. it only helps me, helps the cinematographer, so we can have actually a lot of more details and a lot more lighting to play around. I even like last night talking to Sam about the Alpha one, also like talking about like crazy ISOs that's all we want. We want to capture as much as we can, so our plates becoming a lot more lighting sources, right? And not just all daytime; it's like nighttime. That's the biggest challenge is how much you can see at night, right? So having these cameras that we can actually capture at this high ISO, it only is going to help us to make it look more realistic and have more information in our plates.
And I think we have one more clip here from Snowfall. Let's take a look.
Where you going? Come on. We gotta celebrate getting that proposal in, honey.
How much of that is work? Are the back?
All the windows that you see, like it's, well, let me see. There's another window that looks outside. This office, particularly, I don't know if we have a shot that is behind, but in this particular one is a set. It's an office that has a big window, and the window it's outside. The outside is a street, which actually is very fascinating to be able to see through the window, because then all the plates, we have these cars driving by, we have people walking by, we have trees like moving. Like I remember seeing one of the plates that the AJ did on a very windy day, and the tree was like super crazy, and then we move a different plate. But that gives you so much reality, it just gives you so much production value also, like in terms of like, you don't really know if you're on a set, on a stage, or you're actually on the office and the streets, because you can see all this, like that tree, for example, that is a moving element that you would not be able to get it on a green screen.
Also, the show takes place in 1985, and so like for a lot of these plates, we'd have to go in and remove buildings that wouldn't be there. And in this case, we had to have period cars driving by. Mm-hmm. So if you think about having to try to shoot that in reality, you've got to lock up the street, you've got to have the cars going by for those. It would just be a nightmare to try to do that in real life.
So there's a lot of other things outside of I guess we kind of consider that, but that's another thing, is be able to control the time period.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think with Snowfall, when we talk, it kind of started a little bit and then kind of started taking more and more and more. Take us through kind of how you kind of started with.
Yeah, and in season 4, we kind of experiment, because that's what it was really. Like we have a few walls, mostly for small windows that we use some LED walls. And I think we all learned. You see, there is a car passing by there, but we learned about the beauty and how production friendly, and even cost efficient in many ways these LED walls were in season 4, at the end of the season 4. Now season 5, we were like pretty much all in on the LED walls. We built like a big for the penthouse. We have was it a 62 by 14 feet wall for the penthouse, and then a lot of other sets. We just continue doing more walls all around. I got more involved in season 5 in terms of like trying to collaborate with AJ and seeing like what it will work in terms of the time of the day and colors, and even like I remember talking to AJ at some point, it's like defocusing, right? Because it's also like all these tools that you have is not just pure image. You can also shift some of the color temperatures on your footage. You can defocus the screens also to work in terms of like maybe you are really close to the wall and you need some help in terms of having more out of focus. All this information and all this like collaboration with a team like AJ, it only helped the cinematographer to accomplish all this. And the Snowfall, like season 5, as I said, we went all in, and I know the next season and final season 6 it will be even more. Now, like when I did all this card stuff, like I'm already like looking forward to even adding more layers to it, you know, like some even laser projectors, maybe like to get some reflections and, you know, getting more panels to get more reacting lighting. Because now it's just a light source for me. You know, it's not just a backdrop, it's become a light source that I'm actually trying to use it a lot more to be more realistic.
Yeah, one of the cool things about this process with Snowfall was that we did start with basically just video plates, right? And the more they got used to it, they knew that it could work. The more they started going, what else can we do? Maybe we can add some tracking to this, right? And then by the end of the season, it was like, okay, let's do a full virtual set. So for season 6, we're actually going to have an episode that's almost full virtual production for the entire episode. And I think it takes that learning curve for these productions and producers to kind of get into it and go, all right, I'm not fully sold on it. Let's start here, and you can push me forward.
Yeah.
And that's been a great process for us. I really like it. So.
And there's a learning curve, right? And they're like not just for the production side, it's also from the cinematography side and even the crew and everybody to get used to this, you know, because at first it could be, even for myself, right? It could be a little bit of a threaten or something new and my, something else that I have to take care of, right? It's not just my lighting. Now it's a panel that is going to be a problem or not, you know? So, but it's a learning curve that as you're getting more involved, I think you're just going to love it more and more.
That must be, that's kind of Dave, like David has been living this, I think,
Yes.
for a little while on the front end of this.
Yeah. It's music to our ears to hear that.
And what are you guys doing out there to help with this learning curve and people accepting it?
Right. So I mentioned the kind of history of virtual production, and we did some mistakes in the past, us technology people, you know, bringing virtual production to the market. After Avatar in particular, there was a huge amount of interest around the way it was made, and we did full-on marketing, those of us who were involved with that, and to say, isn't that amazing? But the one thing we didn't do is to make it palatable and make sense to production, and we failed to explain how that worked enough so that it would be, okay, I want to try this. We didn't even get there. And so at that time, Avatar and virtual production remained production. There was a number of movies, dozens, that were made using this, but they were very expensive and you needed to have a big crew. And so then technology evolved and this new phase came in, many of us who were there in various companies at the time ended up at Epic, you know, because it was our mission to take the real-time technology and bring it to filmmakers in the film and TV group. And so we were careful to not hype it too much and to really think from the get-go, what will it take, and to listen, you know. And even what you just said now, we're listening, we're learning what we need to do. So we have put together a lot of training programs, and in particular, there's one that's called the Unreal Fellowship, we call it. And it's called that way because looking at the film and TV industry, people learn the way you describe. You don't go to a class or you don't go to learn. You learn on the job, on the set. It's an apprenticeship. It's a fellowship on the set. So our training for Unreal Engine and the things we do, we modeled it on that. And small classes, or this was online classes mostly during the pandemic, and people who were out of work, you know, filmmakers, because of many productions shut down. So we took advantage of that with really focusing a training program around the filmmakers, and then bringing other filmmakers that had learned and talking their language. And in a way, we stepped back a bit, like I'm being careful to step back now when you're sharing your experience, because we don't know how exactly you learn, and we need to be very much listening to that and adapting to it. And so we're developing a whole class system. This fellowship is expanding. It was successful. Many people went back to work, and now they were the Unreal Engine expert, and they helped their productions, and that was helpful. But it's only helpful if it works the way you just described. If an AJ comes in and he knows how it works, and he talks your language, and so we help AJ, and we listen to the tech stuff, of course. We have lots of work to do still to develop the technology so that it's faster. You can have bigger scenes, bigger worlds. So just like the real world, you can go shoot anywhere you want. But so there is education. There's also standards that are very important to develop at this time. We invented a lot of things, not just Epic, lots of partners. You're inventing things even in production, writing code. So it's important to make sure that these get standardized as fast as possible, and that we together, Sony, and where you have a lot of hardware equipment and all, that this new world is sort of codified in a way that if someone sets up a wall for the first time, it's not so much of a science experiment, but there are steps to go, just like the way you set any of your cameras here with the pluge and the Macbeth charts and all these things, they need to be sort of reinvented for the new 3D world that's beyond the wall, right? And so lots of effort, but we're very careful, and we're very happy to be here in the panel like this, and we are very careful to listen to what you do and the features, for AJ to translate what that means in terms of features, and then we implement that and keep on going. So,
And speaking of working with the creatives, and what are some of the biggest challenges currently you see, AJ?
Well, I mean, the technology is still in a very nascent stage. So what we try to do is work with Epic. We try to work with, panel manufacturers and Sony camera manufacturers to say, look, these are the issues we're having. How can you solve them? Can you change the pixel pitch? Can you give me panels at 120 hertz, which Planar did for us? And same thing with Sony. We do a lot of tests about color. Color is a big problem because the camera sensors don't necessarily see the same colors that your eye sees. And so that's one of the things that I think that there's a possibility for the Sony Venice to really stand out. It already has a really amazing sensor, but taking into consideration how it's judging what it's seeing on this wall, that's going to be a huge improvement that's still coming. I think that as far as working with creatives, it's really just, like you're saying, the education and getting to a point where everyone understands how the workflow has to shift. If you're going to do full virtual production, you're going to have to shift not just the workflow, but also your budget. People go, oh my God, virtual production's so expensive. It's not really. You're taking money from other buckets and putting them into this bucket. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, we actually just put out an article in Variety about Snowfall and how much money they saved using this instead of doing locations. I want to say it was like $500,000 per episode or something that they saved.
Wow.
So, if it's used properly and you have everybody on the same page and the teams working together, it's not more expensive. And in many ways, it's a lot easier and higher quality than any other way of doing it.
I think that's interesting about teams working together, because we at Sony, we make master monitors, we make panels, we make cameras. And over the last 6 months now, I guess, we really started to get all those groups together to figure out how we, Sony, can solve those problems, which is really encouraging, because a lot of times we get focused on our own individual products. So it's encouraging to have everybody coming together and understanding that, and working closely with Epic and understanding where are those pain points and listening.
You make PlayStation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And listening. Right. The listening part, I think, is what we're doing probably better than we ever have. And that Venice 2.0 is kind of that, we listened. In 4 years, we kind of ticked off a lot of things that people wanted. What are the challenges you see currently with virtual production?
Well, I guess it's in the beginning. Obviously, like I do believe, most of my colleagues, cinematographers, will go through the same experience I had, thinking of all the challenges, right? Because it's a new technology, it's a new light source, it's a new everything for all of us. I think like getting early enough with a team like AJ, trying to get as much knowledge and information that you can have before you jump into a production. If a Snowfall Season 5 would have been my first time using LED walls, I think that will be a little bit a shock or a scary position to be as a cinematographer. So I had experience before, and I did a few music videos where I test LED walls, right? Because there are some small projects that you can actually incorporate this technology, start getting familiar with it, and understanding what the limitations are, right? I mean, what can you do and what you cannot do, Because also there's also some limitations with some of the shorter angles that you can use, or which one you cannot use, or even frame rates on the camera that you can use or you cannot use. There's a lot of information limitations that you have to kind of start getting yourself involved. That way, when you get to a show like Snowfall, then you're not thinking going that route because you're gonna hit a wall very soon, right? So trying to avoid all these problems that you might gonna face. So I think information, education, getting your hands on, there's enough information, I think, from AJ, other vendors, Sony, of LED or virtual production. And I was lucky enough also to have some colleagues who have done it before. So being able to talk to them and see what's the first, what to avoid, right? It's the first thing is what you don't want to do, just go this direction, and just start getting yourself in that route. Because, at the beginning, there's something that says the future, but I have to say that's what's happening now. It's the present.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've seen it more and more, that I would love to have all my sets being LED walls, more virtual production. That's just working in my favor as a cinematographer, and I think it also works in the favor of production if it's all well planned. Because at the end of the day, it's extra planning, right? Because you have something else to think about it before you're shooting, which is getting involved with production designers, with all the construction, with AJ, and even the team who will go and photograph or capture all your plates. Then you, as a cinematographer, you have to get involved early enough in this to make this work for you, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all these tools, it have to work to you, and because the problem is when all this you have to work for them, that's when you start facing a problem, right? So that's why everything all is kind of blending all together to be efficient, production friendly, right? Because I mean, I know the producers on Snowfall, they were super happy about how fast we can move from shooting 3 pages in the car to a penthouse. We would spend 3 hours in the car and then we go to the penthouse set and shoot another 2-3 pages, and that was our day. And that being able to do that in all the sets and knowing okay, we already know we're gonna go to the penthouse to see this kind of plates and da-da-da-da, then AJ will go ahead and start prepping all this. So by the time you walk into the penthouse set, half of your lighting is ready, right? Because there's all these LED walls already giving you the atmosphere of it. So
Especially with the Venice.
Well, and then it's funny enough because we've light the Snowfall with very low levels as well, working at 2500 ISO. And I remember with this big LED wall, there's a moment where AJ and I were oh, can we just dimmer it even more, that LED wall, because it's too much ambient lighting. And but there's a limitation also in how much you can dimmer before you start getting some artifacts or color shifting on the LED walls. So then you learn that, and then that one set have to be a little bit lifted in terms of my levels, right? But all work together.
And I think that's one of the things we're looking at with our wall and our camera. It's okay, what can we do with this combination? How can we make it more efficient? I think the future, we just saw the announcement of 5.0. Mm-hmm. I think we're all excited about that. Let's take a look at what Unreal is going to give us in 5.0.
Right, Unreal Engine 5. So what we saw now is work that's been done with the latest version of Unreal that just came out. So these are the pioneers, including, I understand, AJ, that you've been dabbling in Unreal Engine 5 for your set as well.
Yeah, I know you said not to do it, but we did it anyway.
Right. We told everyone to be very careful when it was in development, but AG was one that took it and gave it a try. But Unreal Engine 5 really is a big, major improvement. It allows, there's two big subsystems in Unreal Engine 5, one called Nanite, which is about bringing visual effects size worlds into the real-time engine and having those worlds run in real time so that you can put them in front of the camera on walls. And the other is Lumens, which is a real-time rendering that's allowing ray tracing and all kind of other rendering features so that the combination of Nanite and Lumens together make it feasible to have much larger worlds and higher frame rates to put in the walls in front of the cinematographers. And the goal with that is really to, virtual production, there's two ways to use it. You can go and shoot live action plates out there and bring them to the stage. That's one great way when the live action locations exist. And then when they don't exist and you're doing a science fiction movie or something, then you can build those, or it's like a period movie and you want to do old cars and old. So you build those and you bring them in, and that's where the technology between the gaming side and now the film and TV side all come together, is that you can build these worlds that can be suitable for games, or they can be suitable for film and TV, and all sorts of other industries that are also embracing this concept of having photoreal real-time assets right in front of them. The car industry does it for car configurators. If you go buy a Ferrari right now, they'll show you your car you're going to buy, and you're going to adapt it and change all the features. The same thing goes on in manufacturing, in architecture, for visualization of all sorts. So we're seeing all the industries coming together, and the film industry has always been creating all these magical world of imagination, and that participates into this road toward the metaverse, not to mention the M word, but when all these industries will be coming together, it's very important that the film and TV industry and broadcast be at a place where you can feed into that. The film and TV industry has been very innovative over the years, but often the innovation got away. And there was innovation in our world, but it got taken away by other industries and etc. Here we're at the beginning of something else, something new, where all these virtual worlds will be immersive. They are in this way on virtual production, but they can also be used with VR goggles and all these other ways, and you can experience these worlds. So maybe one day the worlds that you shoot on your TV show, is something that can be experienced at home, not just in looking at the show that you made, but also people maybe can go in this room that your characters were in and experience the show in other ways. I think it's part of the future. It may be soon, it may be not so soon, but it will happen. And I think all the technologies, real-time technologies, are bringing those possibilities, and all the great cameras and walls and all the rest of it that the company like Sony does also brings all the TVs, right? The televisions that are in the home, they will change and they will adapt to these new technologies. So it's a very exciting time, and I just have to be careful not to get too excited, and so that it doesn't get the way on your projects that you're doing now. That's why we're going to keep on listening and learning, from what you do. So
I think we're right about time, but I think it's I think learning and listening, and I love the tools have to work for me. I don't work for the tools. I'm probably going to steal that. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I know you have an early call tomorrow, but I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and joining us on the paneling. It was great, and we probably go another hour talking about this stuff easily. But thank you very much, and thank you all for joining. Have a great NAB.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Good stuff.